So I didn't expect to see Fox stuff in that. Um, Based on the title, not cool. Anyways, um, that was an early Field and Stream film that I got from the. It was the Mogul Brothers collection, and then ended up with Oregon Archive, and we scanned it. Um, yeah, sorry about that. Uh, um, but anyways, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks 16mm lunch show. And behind me, I have a film that I have a couple of films where I don't know the titles at all. Like, they're just reels with no cans. And yeah, I have no idea. Ooh, this one's got like a crazy bend to it. I don't know if you see that. We're gonna have to get that off that reel because that's gonna cause all sorts of problems. All right. So, anyways, I have one of those films set up here. So I don't quite know what it is. So we're gonna watch it, and then if I find out the title, I'll fill it in. Enjoy. I mean, yesterday it was potentially a nuclear warhead promotional film, and it turned out to be not that at all. It turned out to be a poem about Chicano history in America. So let's see what this is. I've got no clues. There's no pieces of tape on this that had any information on it. So let's find out. Enjoy.
There is a phrase which sooner or later everybody in this country will almost certainly use. What is it? Well, let's imagine that you are hurrying along the dark street on a cold winter night. The wind is blowing bitterly, and the icy rain is driving into your face. But here at last is the house of your friends. And a moment later, you are being welcomed indoors. And still shivering, take off your things. Then come in where it's warm, they say. And you are brought into the living room, where, blessed sight, a bright fire burns. And then, as you stretch out your hands and rub them before the cheerful blaze, you say, yes, of course. You say there's nothing like a good coal fire. But come down the next morning into that same room, pull the curtains, and the cold, unfriendly light falls upon that same fireplace. But what a difference. Where last night the living fire danced its welcome to you, there is now nothing but cold grey ashes. And you know that no new fire can burn there until those ashes have been cleared away. And that brings me to my text. It's in a book you don't often read, the book of Numbers, chapter 4 and verse 13. And they shall take away text. Let me put it in its proper setting for you. You remember how for long, weary years the people of Israel endured captivity in Egypt. How God raised up their great captain Moses, and how under his leadership there came that great day when they stood on the shore of the Red Sea and looked back upon the destruction of their enemies, the hosts of Pharaoh. Small wonder they danced and sang. This was Liberation Day. They were free. Now, thought they, now for the promised land and the milk and the honey. But they were to find, as many another liberated nation has found since, that there are no shortcuts to the promised land. Do you remember a song that used to come over the radio during the dark days of the war? There's a new world over the skyline. It wasn't great music, and it wasn't great poetry, but it was just what we thought and hoped, that with the destruction of our enemies would come the brave new world we had been promised, just over the skyline. But the people of Israel found, as we are finding, that skylines have a way of receding as we draw near to them. They were to know the heat of the desert sun, the cold of the desert night. They were to know hunger and thirst, short rations and weariness. Hope deferred would make their hearts sick, so that the days came when they even thought wistfully of the old times in Egypt. Those who had crossed the Red Sea as children grew up and had children of their own. Those who had left captivity as men and women in their prime grew old and died and were left in their lonely desert graves. And still the weary march went on. But they went on. They went on until they reached the promised land. What sustained them? What kept them going? It was a very simple thing. But like most simple things, it was essential. They kept alive their faith in God. That was all, but it was everything. For 6 days they would march, but on the evening of the 6th day every week, the march stopped. Camps were pitched, and the next morning, the Sabbath day had come again, the day of rest and worship. All that vast multitude gathered together, and all eyes were strained, watching for something. And presently, there it was, a thin spiral of smoke rising into the sky. A spiral which soon became a cloud shot through with fire. And then the living flame itself leapt up. And as the fire of sacrifice burnt on the altar, the heart of this pilgrim people was lifted up. There, in that holy fire, their sins were purged. But there was more in it than that. Fire is a mysterious thing. It is elemental. It is beauty and life. It can be fury and death. It is our humble slave and will cook our dinner. It may be our pitiless master and destroy our city. I'm not surprised that the old pagans worshipped fire. They saw in it the symbol of life, of the spirit, of that undying fire which is in every human heart, aspiring to heaven. How natural it was that the Israelites should use fire in their worship. But as they watched that flame on the desert altar, they worshipped not fire, but God. It was that which kept them steady, kept them on the road to the promised land, their faith in God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their God. Without faith, nothing can endure. Without worship, faith itself grows weak. So they worshipped and found strength. But then, as they watched, the fire on the altar burnt low, smoldered, went out. And now, as our text tells us, the Kohathites had a job to do. They had to clear away the ashes from the altar. A humble job, a job nobody likes, but necessary, for it is as true of the altars of God as of our domestic hearths, that no new fires can be kindled until the ashes are cleared away. God has many altars. Think of two of them: the altar of our nation's life and the altar of your own life. We have lived through great and terrible days, but looking back, do you not remember how the darkest days were lit by a flame-like faith and courage? Remember Dunkirk, and how, as our people read the grim story of the beaches and the little ships, we seemed to pass beyond selfishness and achieved miracles. Remember how everywhere we were asking, not how much can I get, but how much can I give, and how much can I do? In a great comradeship of suffering and peril, we forgot ourselves in serving others. The war turned common men into heroes and made neighbors of us all. How brightly the flame burnt then. Do you remember, too, the days and nights when, assailed by the might of the Luftwaffe, we had to entrust all our hopes of the future to that gallant few? And once again the flame shone in the dark, and lads who had barely left school or college leapt into the sky, and facing fearful odds, bought our future with their lives. Strange to think that this is the future for which they died. The flame which burned on the altar of our nation's life then was essentially the same as the flame that burned on the altar in the wilderness. The flame of faith, faith in our cause, faith in our ability to win through to the promised land, faith in God. It could carry us through this long, weary march of ours today, but the fire has burnt low. There are ashes on the altar, ashes of selfishness, of lawlessness, and of a cynical despair. No new fire can burn there until these ashes are cleared away. And isn't that our job as Christians? As the Kohathites kept the desert altar clean and ready for the fire, isn't it our task to help to clear the ashes from the altar of Britain's life? We can help to light the flame again of Christian faith and worship, but only if our altars are clean, only if the fire burns in our hearts. Think of that strange interlude described in the last chapter of the Gospel of John. The disciples had spent a long night fishing and had caught nothing. Tired, disappointed, they were pulling back to land when they saw something. Dimly, through the morning mist, they saw someone standing on the shore by a brightly burning fire. Suddenly, they recognized him. "It is the Lord," cried John. And soon, happy in his company, they forgot their tiredness, their disappointment. By the fire he had kindled, they warmed themselves, and as they talked with him, one at least found that Jesus had lit a fire of faith and devotion again in his own heart. That is a parable of what Jesus can do for every one of us. He takes away the ashes of failure and faithlessness. He lights the fire. He sends us on our way again with courage and faith. And when the fire burns again in our hearts, will not its light and warmth be seen and felt by others? Isn't this our job as Christians? Our job and our opportunity? Let us make our own that great prayer of Charles Wesley's. O thou who camest from above the pure celestial fire to impart, kindle a flame of sacred love on the mean altar of my heart. Then, never fear, we shall reach our promised land.
Huh. Did anybody get a title off that? I couldn't find a title. But maybe I was not. Maybe it was obscure. That was an odd thing. Someone's sermon. I have run across that in the past, but not with a British clergyman. It was American. And the deal was, I think it was a TV show. So it was a kinescope. And it was shown, every Sunday, and it was similar type of thing. But wow, fascinating. Let's see, what do we got? Let's learn about the geography of the Southwestern states. Enjoy.
Big and empty, isn't it? This is our first impression of the Southwestern states. Great open spaces where snow-capped mountains border the desert. Rugged regions of sun-baked mountains and canyons. Acres and acres of pine trees and hardy shrubs. Level, open plains where few trees grow. Yes, the Southwest is a big region. In the United States, the Southwest is more than 1/6 of all the area of the country. 4 states make up this region: Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. These are big states, bigger than all of France, Italy, Switzerland, Belgium, and Holland. Long before the white men came, the Southwest was inhabited by Indians. Some tribes lived in pueblos, as they still do today. Some have kept their old ways of doing things, especially their arts and crafts. After the Indians came the Spanish settlers, who left a lasting influence on the region. And after the Spanish came men who settled the open ranges and developed the great ranching industry that we see today. For many years, the Southwest has been, and it still is, a land where men make their living selling beef cattle. Fred Kirby owns a 200,000-acre ranch in Texas. His foreman helps handle the 7,000 head of cattle on the ranch. But why have great cattle ranches developed in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma? Look at the hardy grass that grows on the dry rangelands, and remember that this is feed for the cattle. Look at the great open spaces, and remember that this affords enough room and enough natural feed for the herds. Look at the map and see where the principal grazing areas are. Let's take another look at the land. Recognize the Southwest? Great open spaces, and yet no cattle here. No, this is farmland, land used for growing crops. This farm is 1,000 acres. John Wilson is a wheat farmer. That is the only crop he grows. In the fall, he plows his land and plants the wheat. This wheat sprouts in the fall and stays alive all winter. It is called winter wheat. The winter wheat ripens in early summer. After the harvest, the wheat is stored in grain elevators. Wheat elevators like these are common in the cities of Oklahoma and Texas. From towns such as this come two important products of the Southwest: wheat and cattle. Wheat and cattle, moving by rail from the Southwest to other parts of the country. We have seen the main regions where cattle are grazed. Wheat is produced here on somewhat the same kind of land. Notice that most of the wheat area is east of this line. The reason? There is more rainfall east of this line. And mostly east of this rainfall line, where there is still more moisture, we find cotton, another important crop. These small cotton plants are part of the growing cotton industry in the Southwest. In recent years, the cotton crop has been greatly increased. How is this being done? One way is by irrigating the land, by bringing water to land that ordinarily would be too dry for cotton. Getting enough water is one of the greatest problems of the Southwest. To understand the problem, let's remember that a great portion of the Southwest is desert land. And much of this region is land that has just enough rainfall to support hardy grasses. And so, because rainfall is not plentiful, the rivers of the Southwest are vital sources of water. 5 important rivers are the Colorado, the Salt, the Gila, the Pecos, and the Rio Grande. These rivers receive most of their water from the highlands of this region and its borderlands. Fed by the melting snows and heavier rainfall in the highlands, the rivers flow down from the slopes, often cutting through deep canyons. As the rivers flow farther and farther south, they become small, shallow streams in the arid land. How can this precious water be saved? Here is the answer. A dam across the Salt River to hold the water. A dam across the Rio Grande to hold the water. Great numbers of dams throughout the Southwest, each one storing the precious water. This water is brought to the valleys in irrigation canals and siphoned off into ditches. Even desert land, when supplied with water, will produce abundant crops. Under the hot Arizona sun, foodstuffs are grown all year round on irrigated land. Lettuce that comes to our tables in midwinter. Carrots, strawberries, oranges. These and many other food products are part of the new wealth of the Southwest. Wealth made possible by water. Here is another liquid, oil, that has brought great wealth to the Southwest. Out of the earth comes the oil from which we make gasoline and 100 more products. Oil fields like this are a familiar scene in Texas and Oklahoma. Often found along with oil is natural gas, another important product. Natural gas wells are sources for gas that we use in our homes and factories. Underground pipelines convey the gas from the wells. Pipelines are also used to transport oil. From Texas and Oklahoma, pipelines carry both oil and natural gas to industrial cities, many of them in the north and east. But oil and gas are not the only resources found in the earth. From this huge open-pit copper mine in Arizona comes copper ore, one of the most valuable of all minerals. The ore is refined into copper in smelting plants that are part of the growing industries of the Southwest. There are minerals not only in the earth, but in the sea. Here along the ocean shores of Texas, the valuable mineral magnesium is extracted from salt water. The metal magnesium is another product of the growing industries of the Southwest. Many products are sent through the ship channel of Houston, Texas, to other states and to other lands. The bustling port of Houston is one of the growing shipping centers of the Southwest. The city is also a refining center for much of the oil from the Southwest. Cities such as Dallas, called the New York of Texas, are fast-growing business centers. Others, such as San Antonio, are historic cities rich in Spanish heritage. Still others, such as Phoenix and Tucson, are centers of a growing tourist industry. People come to enjoy the sunny, healthful climate. This, too, is part of the story of the Southwestern states. We haven't seen all of the story, but we've gotten some impressions. First, the region is a big region, and the people who live in the great open spaces of the Southwest have developed many ways of using their land and its resources. They have tapped the oil in the earth and dug out other valuable minerals such as copper. They have turned the great grasslands into ranches. They have planted wheat and other crops on the productive land. They have tackled the problem of non-productive land by building dams to create a source of water, water with which to grow crops where none would grow before. And from the products and resources of the land, the people are building new wealth and a promising future for the Southwestern states.
So if you are ever in the Houston area, and I used to do screenings there once a year at Aurora Picture Show in the early 2000s. It's been a long time. But there's a ship channel tour that I recommend, especially if you are a fan of industrial infrastructure, refineries. I mean, it's a pollution ecological nightmare, but it is also stunning to see the scope of it, and the ships and all that stuff. So, and I think it's free. You just have to get a reservation to be on there. So, big fan, not a big fan. So, love, hate. All right. So let's see what we got. What else we have coming up? Yeah, this is fascinating. This is I think that what's his name? Suddenly can't remember his name. Ken Burns took a page out of this book. This is Valley Forge, No Food, No Soldier. Enjoy.
Our sick are naked, our well naked, our unfortunate men in captivity naked. I never heard a summons to duty with so much disgust.
Last night, a dangerous mutiny began. British are now in full possession of the city of Philadelphia. The Continental Army, since the close of the campaign, has retired to a place called Valley Forge, about 20 miles from the city.
December 1777. We marched for the Valley Forge in order to take up our winter quarters. In our miserable condition, to go into the wild woods and build us habitations to stay, not to live in such a weak, starved, and naked condition, was appalling.
I never heard a summons to duty with so much disgust. How I could endure 2 days more fatigue without nourishment of some sort, I could not tell.
I procured a small piece of raw cowhide and made myself a pair of moccasins. The hard edges so galled my ankles while on the march that it was with much difficulty and pain that I could wear them afterwards. But the only alternative I had was to endure this inconvenience or to go barefoot, as hundreds of my companions had to, till they might be tracked by their blood upon the rough, frozen ground.
Wednesday, December 24th. Huts go on slowly. Cold and snow make us fret.
Poor little squirrel who had the ill luck to get cut off from the woods, on fixing himself on the tree, standing alone and surrounded by several of the soldiers' huts, sat upon the tree till he starved to death and fell off. He, however, got rid of his misery soon. He did not live to starve by piecemeal 6 or 7 years.
One hut is to be allowed to each general officer. One to the staff of each brigade. And one to every 12 non-commissioned officers and soldiers.
The soldiers are nearly all covered with huts. A general cry through the camp this evening among the soldiers. No meat, no meat. The distant vales echoed back the melancholy sound. No meat, no meat. No bread, no meat, no soldier.
The water we have to drink and to mix our flour with is out of a brook that runs along the camp.
January 12th. Snow ceased by morning. Cold, but clear.
Of the 11,982 men in camp, 2,898 are unfit for duty because they are barefoot or otherwise naked.
Our arms are in horrible condition, covered with rust, many from which not a single shot can be fired.
Our present situation is the most melancholy that can be conceived. Our army may have to be dissolved. Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland are exhausted.
Wednesday, February 11th. It rained so hard we could not stir out.
Yesterday, upwards of 50 officers of General Greene's division resigned their commissions. This is occasioned by officers' families being so neglected at home because of lack of provisions. Last night, a dangerous mutiny began. suppressed by the spirited exertions of the officers.
At the General Court-Martial, William Maddock found guilty of trying to drive cattle to the enemy, to have all his real and personal estate taken for the use of the United States of America. Sergeant William Dearlove of the 4th Pennsylvania today received 100 lashes well laid on his naked back for stealing money from Frederick Buzzard. John Williamson found guilty of supplying the enemy with cattle, 250 lashes on his bare back well laid on. John Riley of the 2nd Virginia, charged with deserting from his guard and taking with him 2 prisoners in irons, was tried and found guilty of the crime. He was sentenced to death. His Excellency approves of the sentence and orders it to be executed.
Young men under 20 years of age are subject to the greatest number of camp diseases. The principal disease is typhus. Men who come into the hospitals with pleurisy and rheumatisms soon lose the types of their original diseases and suffer or die by catching the deadly typhus from their fellow patients. Of the 11 junior surgeons and mates, 10 took the infection, from which 3 died and another narrowly escaped. The hospitals rob the United States of more citizens than the sword.
Also died today a poor Indian soldier. He engaged for money, doubtless as others do, but he has served his country faithfully. He has fought for those very people who disinherited his forefathers.
More than 2,000 men in camp ought to be inoculated for the smallpox.
When I was inoculated with the smallpox, I took that delectable disease, the itch. It was given us, we supposed, in the infection. I had it to such a degree that I could scarcely lift my hands to my head. Accordingly, we made preparations for a general attack upon it. The first night, one half of the party commenced the action by mixing a sufficient quantity of brimstone and tallow, at the same time not forgetting to mix a plenty of hot whiskey toddy. Thus, prepared with arms and ammunition, we began the operation by plying each other's outsides with brimstone and tallow, and the inside with hot whiskey sling. 2 of the assailants were so overcome, not by the enemy, but by their 2 great exertions in the action, that they lay all night naked upon the field. The rest of us got to our berths somehow, as well as we could. But we killed the itch, and we were satisfied, for it had almost killed us.
Monday, April 23rd. Our medicine chests, long empty, are now being filled again.
The Baron de Steuben has formed separate squads of awkward troops slow in learning the new maneuvers.
The pernicious practice of officers leaving camp on furlough and taking soldiers along as servants must cease.
Daily, this army looks more like a military force and less like an armed horde.
Nearly 500 Virginians arrived in camp today.
The constant drilling and maneuvering has charged the men with new spirit.
That the enemy means to evacuate Philadelphia is a certainty.
Tuesday, May 5th, 1778, order of the day. It having pleased the almighty ruler of the universe to defend the cause of the United American States by raising us up a powerful friend among the princes of the earth. Upon a signal given, the whole army will huzzah, "Long live the King of France." The artillery will then begin again firing 13 rounds.
We had engaged in the defense of our injured country and were willing, nay, we were determined to persevere as long as such hardships were not altogether intolerable. But a kind and holy providence took more notice and better care of us than did the country in whose service we were wearing away our lives by piecemeal.
The long, doubtful winter of war is over. We never had so fair an opportunity of final success as now. Vigor and determination will do everything and anything. We began the war with this kind of spirit. Why not end it with the same?
Wow. A lot more nudity than I had imagined, or at least mentioning of nudity. A lot of naked soldiers. Brutal times. Fascinating, nonetheless. But yeah, totally. Ken Burns watched this film and was like, I wonder if I could do something similar for the Civil War. Okay. Everybody seems to be a little down. I think what you need is some motivation. So we're going to watch this next film, which is on the scanner. Get you motivated. It's right there on the... Where's my finger? I can't find my finger. It's over there. Anyways, this is Motivating the Class. Thanks, McGraw-Hill. Enjoy.
It was a big day for Bill. He arrived in class early that morning to make sure that everything was ready. And he was a little nervous. Most of my student teachers are when they take over an actual class for the first time. But I wasn't worried about Bill. As his supervising teacher, I knew him to be capable, earnest, and eager. He had the makings of a fine teacher. He had a good understanding of theory. Now what he needed was more practical experience. If anything, Bill was a little too eager. I sensed that the moment I walked into the room that morning. Who's this guy Euclid, anyway?
Oh, hello, Mr. Vance.
How do you feel now that the big day has arrived?
Fine.
A little nervous, maybe?
No, I don't think so. I've got my lesson plan pretty well worked out.
Along the lines that you outlined to me the other day?
Yes, but today I want to spend the period getting the students interested in the broader aspects of math. Sort of an orientation to our work this term.
You know, I'm glad you said getting the students interested. That's really the teacher's first job. If we as a teacher's college haven't helped you do that, then we've really failed. Good morning. I want you to feel that this class is yours. I'll be in the back of the room, but pretend like I'm not there.
Mathematics is Mathematics is the queen of the sciences. It is not only one of the oldest sciences in human history. Even the ancient mathematicians and philosophers such as Euclid, Pythagoras, and Archimedes, and many others who solved many problems, were ignorant of the present-day easy arithmetical methods of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. We can't expect to learn them all in 1 year or 2, or even 3. I've written them down because I think you should have some idea of the vastness of mathematics, of the many ways it influences our daily lives. As I was about to say, mathematics is an exact science. You can depend upon mathematics. Am I boring you fellows?
No, sir.
I suppose you boys are taking down notes of this discussion. Let me see that paper. Is this some new kind of tic-tac-toe you boys have learned to play?
No, sir. It's a basketball play we're working out for Friday's game.
I hardly think that a mathematics class is a place for that sort of thing. Do you? As I was saying, mathematics constitutes an exact science. We'll now review This illustrates the reliability of numbers as compared with the reliability of our senses. Our senses tell us that this line is longer than this line. But in this case, our senses are misleading. The only exact answer is by actual measurement. We find that both lines are exactly the same length. Of course, this is an optical illusion. It fools us, but it doesn't fool the ruler. It's important, you see, that we depend upon numbers. I suppose you girls are on the basketball team, too.
Oh, I'm sorry. These are costume sketches for the school play.
Let's try to keep our minds on mathematics, shall we? As I was saying, I becomes the unknown factor, which in algebra is usually expressed by the letter X. You better get used to that letter X. It represents the unknown. It's the ultimate goal in any mathematical adventure. It's the amount of stress a bridge will stand. It's the amount of heat in the atom bomb. It's the cause of cancer. That little letter X is... knowledge of arithmetic is necessary in order to... The interest equals a principal times the rate times the time. To repeat, the interest equals a principal times the rate times the time. The interest equals a principal times the rate times the time. Good knowledge of algebra is for an understanding of geometry. However, our arithmetic is more modern for geometry. A good knowledge of arithmetic is necessary in order to understand. Good knowledge of algebra. However, our arithmetic is more modern than either algebra or geometry. A good knowledge of arithmetic is necessary in order to understand. Good knowledge of algebra is for an understanding of geometry. However, our arithmetic is more modern. So, this is teaching. I feel as though I've been run through a ringer.
You look it. And so do most of your students.
I don't get it. I tried to make the stuff interesting. Maybe I'm just not a good teacher.
That depends, Bill. You know your subject and you're enthusiastic about it. But don't forget, you have to teach boys and girls, too. You have to make math their interest.
What do you mean?
Well, let's sit down over here for a minute. I'll analyze it for you the way I did from the back of the room. First, you have to ask yourself, why are you a good mathematician, Bill?
Why, I'm just interested in it.
Yes, but why are you interested in it?
Well, for one thing, I hope to earn my living with it. I had hoped to. Then, as you know, my father's a math teacher. And, well, I just like the order and beauty of math, the precision of it.
Those are sound enough reasons. You're interested in math because you're going to make money at it. You want your father to be proud of you. And it appeals to your need for order and beauty. Those are basic human goals, Bill. And your interest in math helps you to achieve those goals. But what about those students in here today? What did you do to help them achieve some of their basic goals? Nothing. On the contrary, my boy, you bored some and frustrated others. Take those two basketball players. It happens one of those boys is the team captain. They're tremendously interested in that game. Basketball or any sport helps them to achieve some of their basic goals. And take those girls. They were interested in costumes, appearances. That's an important goal for teenage girls, Bill. And you frustrated those students, too. And when those airplanes went by, you were annoyed because the students jumped up and ran across the room. But why shouldn't they run? For nearly 40 minutes, they had been barricaded in their seats. It wasn't just curiosity that made them go to the windows. Another goal was simply to move around. And you frustrated them, too. The price of frustration was irritability and impatience. You felt it yourself. You were frustrated by your failure to get class interest. But think how badly they were frustrated.
What's the answer?
The answer is to interest them, to motivate them, to set up goals with their help, which they'll want to achieve. Between now and tomorrow, Bill, give it some thought. I'm sure there are many things that you can do. For instance, the next morning I watched Bill carefully, knowing that he'd probably been up half the night, thinking over the many things we had talked about. And now I was very eager to see what he had figured out. So he remembered the airplane incident. Yesterday, it had worked against him. Today, he would use it to advantage.
Yesterday, some of you wondered how fast those airplanes were going. Well, you know, that's a mathematical problem if I ever heard of one. What is the speed of sound? Does anyone know?
I was right. Bill must have been up half the night, and he had come up with something. With this simple device, he caught the imagination of the class. Now they were interested. In the days to follow, Bill held their interest. He incorporated into his lesson plan many practical illustrations of mathematics that were equally meaningful to his students.
The other day, some of you fellows were doping out a basketball play. You were expressing concrete things in terms of symbolic letters. In algebra, we do pretty much the same thing. We use symbolic letters to express concrete things.
The students now began to find some personal interest in the subject. Bill was doing a good job of relating mathematics to their daily experiences.
Last week, we talked a little about optical illusions. We said that numbers don't lie. Well, perhaps they don't lie, but they can be disguised. Alice? Betty? With the help of Alice and Betty, I plotted a trick to show you a practical way to disguise numbers. Alice here appears to be tall and slim, while Betty appears to be short and plump. Actually, they are both the same height and have the same waistline. Thank you.
Bill showed them that numbers weren't as cold and formidable as they appeared to be. Moreover, he gave them many opportunities to participate in demonstrations. Working together, they developed a number of interesting projects. They went outdoors. They enjoyed what they were doing, and they learned mathematics all at the same time. Bill found some good motion pictures that he worked in with his lesson plan. The projector itself provided opportunities to explore some practical problems in ratio. The work became increasingly meaningful to the students. Yes, it was an interesting class. You could tell that much just looking around. There was a lively spirit of competition which kept the students on their toes. They helped to build models which sharpened their ability to visualize. It gave them a chance to work with their hands as well as their heads. A subject area which had seemed remote and dull became alive and real. There was group spirit, too. The youngsters took pride in their progress and were encouraged to keep it up. There were other goals, too. Without boring them, Bill let them know that mathematics would help ensure a secure future. He repeatedly appealed to their need for beauty and harmony. The room took on a new appearance. It became a place where the pupils found the necessary incentives to be well-balanced, successful students. Just looking over the room, I knew that Bill's method of motivating the class would have worked equally well in any subject area.
Thinking of joining the math club, Mr. Vance?
It looks interesting enough. Your pupils certainly have responded.
They keep me on my toes.
The fellows are waiting for you down in the gym.
See what I mean?
Who is this guy Euclid, anyway?
Who is this Euclid guy, anyways? I love that he called those guys fellows, and then when he got hip to what was going on, he called people fellas. But fascinating, absolutely fascinating. An educational film for teachers. Yes. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you, Jeremy, for donating via the Super Thanks button in YouTube. You can also donate via ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks, or go to Venmo at skip-elsheimer. Yeah, what a day. Wow, crazy stuff. Anyways, so I found out the name of that film with the minister talking about the war effort, kind of, but not kind of. Anyways, it was called Ashes to Altar. It was written on the leader. So there you go. Anyways, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll be back live on Monday. Everybody take care. As always, please rewind and love each other and get motivated. I was kind of wondering what was happening with all those jets that flew over. I have a feeling if they were breaking the sound barrier, they would have destroyed those windows. I have another film about that. So, anyways, everybody take care. We will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.